The stars outside the viewing window were cold and distant. Corvith stood there, watching them pass slowly as his ship moved through the emptiness of space. He was old now, older than most Valorians ever lived to be. His blue-gray skin had grown pale over the years, and his four eyes no longer saw as clearly as they once did. But he was still the captain of the Quiet Dawn, and he had kept his crew alive for 30 years. That was no small thing in a galaxy full of danger. Behind him, the bridge hummed with quiet activity. His crew worked at their stations, checking systems, monitoring the route, doing the thousand small tasks that kept a merchant ship running. They were good people, honest traders. They wanted nothing more than to carry their cargo, make their profit, and return home to their families. Corvith wanted that too, which was why they were taking the long way. Pelix, the young navigator, looked up from his console. His eyes were wide with the nervousness that never seemed to leave him. He was barely an adult by Valorian standards, and this was only his third voyage. Everything scared him. But he was smart, and he learned fast, and Corvith saw great potential in him. "Captain," Pelix said, his voice tight, "the route adjustment is complete. We are now on course through the Hollow Reach. Estimated arrival at the merchant station is 23 days. 23 days. Corvith let out a slow breath. The direct route would have taken them only 6 days, but the direct route passed through human space, and that was something no Valorian ship would ever do willingly. "Very good," Corvith said. "Maintain current speed. No unnecessary transmissions. We move quietly." Pelix nodded quickly. "Yes, Captain, quietly." Corvith turned back to the window. He could feel the question hanging in the air, the one that Pelix wanted to ask but was too afraid to voice. The young ones always wanted to know about humans. They had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had heard the stories. But they had never seen a human, never been close to human space, and curiosity mixed with their fear. It was an old crew member named Dreth who finally spoke. He was the ship's cargo master, a fat and cheerful Valorian who had traveled more trade routes than anyone else on board. He was not afraid to speak his mind. "The young one wants to know about the humans," Dreth said with a chuckle. "I can see it in his eyes. He thinks the stories are exaggerated." Pelix's face flushed darker. "I did not say that." "You did not have to." Dreth leaned back in his chair, crossing his thick arms over his chest. "Let me tell you something, little navigator. I have been trading across this galaxy for 40 years. I have seen pirates, warlords, and things that would make your blood freeze, but I have never, not once, entered human space, and I never will." Pelix swallowed hard. "But surely they cannot be as bad as the stories say. They are just another species, are they not? Like us, like the Korathi, like the Mindari." Dreth laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Just another species. Boy, let me tell you what humans are. They are persistence hunters. Do you know what that means? It means they do not need to be faster than their prey. They do not need to be stronger. They simply need to keep following. They walk and walk and walk, never stopping, never tiring until their prey collapses from exhaustion, and then they kill it." The bridge had grown quiet. Everyone was listening now. "They heal from wounds that would kill us," Dreth continued. "Break their bones and the bones grow back stronger. Cut them and they repair themselves. They eat poisons for pleasure. They survive in temperatures that would freeze us solid or burn us to ash. They do not sleep the way we do. They can go days without rest and still fight. And when they fight," he shook his head slowly, "when they fight, they do not stop until everything in front of them is dead." Pelix looked pale. "How do you know all this?" "Because I have met survivors," Dreth said quietly. "Traders who strayed too close to human space. Raiders who thought they could attack a human colony. They all said the same thing. The humans came after them, not quickly, not in a rage. Slowly, patiently, like they had all the time in the universe. And one by one they hunted them down." Corvith turned from the window. "That is enough, Dreth. You are frightening the boy." "Good," Dreth said. "He should be frightened. Fear keeps us alive out here." Corvith walked to Pelix's station and placed a hand on the young navigator's shoulder. The stories are true, Pelix, all of them. Humans are not like us. They are something else entirely, something that should not exist. They call themselves a young species, barely a few thousand years into space travel, but they have already built an empire that makes the old powers nervous. They have a fleet they call the Exterminators. Do you know why? Pelix shook his head. Because when something threatens them, they do not defend. They do not negotiate. They exterminate completely, totally. They remove the threat from existence and then move on to the next one. The Sketh swarm attacked a human colony once. A small colony, barely 10,000 people. The humans responded by hunting the Sketh across 3 sectors and destroying every hive they could find. It took them 2 years, but they did not stop until it was done. Pelix stared at him. Why? Why would they do that for just one colony? Corvith smiled, but it was a sad smile. That is the question, is it not? Why do humans protect their own so fiercely? Why do they chase their enemies to the ends of the galaxy? I do not know, Pelix. I do not think anyone knows, but I know this. I do not want to find out. And that is why we take the long way. That is why we add 17 days to our journey. Because out here in the Hollow Reach we are safe. There are no humans here. There is nothing here at all. He looked out at the empty stars. And nothing is exactly what I want. The quiet dawn continued on its path, a small ship in an endless void, carrying its cargo of rare minerals toward a distant station. The crew settled back into their routines, the conversation fading into memory. Pelix stared at his console, thinking about the stories he had heard, wondering if they could really be true. Outside, the stars watched in silence. None of them knew that far behind them, hidden in the darkness between systems, something else was watching too. Something hungry, something patient. The Sketh had found their trail. And the Sketh never lost their prey. 7 days into the journey, the engine died. Corvith was in his quarters when it happened, reviewing cargo manifests on his personal screen. He felt it first as a vibration, a shudder that ran through the floor beneath his feet. Then came the sound, a terrible grinding noise that echoed through the ship like the scream of a dying animal. And then silence. Complete, terrible silence. The lights flickered once, twice, and then switched to emergency red. Corvith was on his feet and running before his mind fully understood what was happening. He burst onto the bridge to find his crew in chaos. Pelix was shouting into his console, trying to get readings. Dreth had fallen from his chair and was struggling to stand. The other crew members were frozen, staring at their screens with expressions of pure terror. "Report," Corvith shouted. "What happened?" "The main engine," Pelix gasped. "It just stopped, all of it. Primary, secondary backup. Everything is dead, Captain. We are drifting." Corvith felt his heart sink. A ship without engines in the Hollow Reach was a dead ship. There were no stations here, no colonies, no passing traffic. They had chosen this route specifically because it was empty, because nothing came through here. Nothing would find them, nothing would help them. "Get me engineering," Corvith ordered. "I want to know what happened and how we fix it." But when the engineering report came, it was worse than he had feared. The chief engineer, a thin Valorian named Torath, appeared on the bridge screen with oil stains on his face and fear in all 4 eyes. "It was sabotage, Captain," Torath said, his voice shaking. "Something got into our engine core, a small device no bigger than my fist. It released a corrosive agent that ate through the primary coupling. The whole system is destroyed. I cannot repair it, not out here, not without a shipyard." Sabotage. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. "How?" Dreth demanded. "How did something get into our engine? We checked everything before we left port, every system, every component." "It was already there," Torath said. "Hidden inside a replacement part we installed at the last station. I found pieces of it. Captain, this was not random. Someone knew our route. Someone wanted us to stop exactly here in the middle of nothing." Corvith's mind raced. Who would want to disable a simple merchant ship? They carried valuable cargo, yes, but not valuable enough to justify this kind of operation. This was too precise, too calculated. This was a trap. And then Pelix screamed, "Captain, I am picking up signals. Multiple contacts coming fast." Corvith spun to face the main screen. The display flickered to life, showing a tactical view of the space around them. For a moment it was empty, just stars and darkness. And then the dots appeared. Red dots, dozens of them, then hundreds. "Sketh," Corvith whispered, "the Sketh swarm." The bridge erupted into panic. Crew members shouted, cried, prayed to gods that probably could not hear them out here. The Sketh were nightmares given form, a hive mind of biomechanical predators that consumed everything in their path. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They simply fed. "Quiet," Corvith roared, and somehow his voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone quiet, I need to think." He stared at the screen, watching the red dots grow closer. They had maybe 6 hours before the swarm reached them. 6 hours to do something, anything, or they would all die screaming in the dark. "Pelix," he said slowly, "our communications, what do we have?" The young navigator checked his console with trembling hands. "Long-range communications are jammed, Captain. The sabotage device must have included a jamming component. I can only send short-burst emergency signals. Low power. They will not reach far." "How far?" Pelix calculated quickly. 3 systems, maybe 4. But Captain, there is nothing in those systems. No stations, no colonies, just empty space and— He stopped. His face went pale. "And what?" Corvith demanded. "And human patrol routes," Pelix whispered. "Captain, the only things that might pick up our signal are human ships." The bridge fell silent again. Every eye turned to Corvith. He felt the weight of their stares, the weight of their lives pressing down on him. They were asking him to choose, die to the Sketh or call the humans. Dreth laughed bitterly. "So this is our choice. Be eaten by monsters or summon different monsters. What a wonderful day this has become." "The humans might not come," someone said. "We are not their people. We are nothing to them. They have no reason to help us." "And if they do come," another crew member added, "what then? The stories say they take prisoners. They experiment on other species. They are just as bad as the Sketh, maybe worse." "Worse?" Toreth's voice crackled over the comm. "Nothing is worse than the Sketh. I have seen what they do to ships. I have seen the recordings. At least with humans there is a chance. With the Sketh there is only death." Corvith raised his hand and the argument stopped. He looked around at his crew, at these people who had trusted him with their lives for so many years. He thought about his family waiting for him back home. He thought about Pelix, so young, with so much life ahead of him. "We vote," Corvith said quietly. "This decision belongs to all of us. Those who wish to send the signal, raise your hand." For a long moment, no one moved. The fear of humans was too deep, too old, too ingrained in their culture. Generations of Valorians had avoided human space. Generations of parents had taught their children the terrifying stories. Then Pelix raised his hand. Everyone stared at him. The young navigator was shaking, his eyes wet with tears, but his hand stayed up. "I do not want to die here," he said. "I do not want to die without trying. If the humans are monsters, then let them be monsters. But let me have a chance, please." One by one, other hands rose. Dreth, Toreth on the screen, the navigation assistant, the cook, the cargo workers, until finally everyone on the bridge had their hand raised. Everyone except Corvith. He looked at them all, these brave, terrified people, and he felt something in his chest that might have been pride. "Then it is decided," he said. "Pelix, send the signal. All frequencies, maximum power, everything we have. Tell them we are a merchant vessel under attack. Tell them we need help." Pelix nodded, turning to his console with renewed purpose. His fingers flew across the controls, crafting the message, encoding it in standard galactic distress format. Signal sent, he said. Now we wait. 3 systems away, on a human patrol station orbiting a dead moon, a young woman named Hana sat at her communications console. It was a quiet night, like every night in this forgotten corner of space. Nothing ever happened here. She was half asleep, dreaming of home when her console beeped. She opened her eyes and looked at the screen. Distress signal received. VLORIN vessel. Coordinates follow. SKETH swarm DETCTD. Hana sat up straight. Valorians out here. That made no sense. Valorians never came anywhere near human space. And the Sketh were supposed to be far from here, hunting in other sectors. She ran the signal again, confirming its authenticity. Then she picked up her communicator and connected to the bridge. Captain Tiho, she said, you need to see this now. On the bridge of the Iron Wake, the flagship of the Exterminator fleet, a tall man with gray at his temples and scars on his hands looked at the message Hana had forwarded. His name was Tiho, and he had been hunting monsters for 20 years. He read the coordinates. He read the ship type. He read the words SKETH swarm, and his jaw tightened. Hana, he said calmly, wake the fleet, all ships, full combat deployment. Sir, her voice was uncertain. It is a Valorian ship. They are not allies. They have never asked for our help before. Tiho looked at the message again. Somewhere out there in the dark, people were about to die, people who had called for help. They are asking now, he said, and we answer. He turned to his bridge crew, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Spin up the Exterminator fleet. We have work to do. 3 days passed in the darkness. The quiet dawn drifted through the hollow reach like a dead thing, its engines silent, its lights dim. The crew had done everything they could to conserve power. They ate cold food because cooking used too much energy. They wore extra clothing because heating used too much energy. They spoke in whispers, as if the Sketh might hear them across the void. Corvith barely slept. He stood at the bridge window for hours, watching the stars, waiting for something to happen. Either the humans would come or the Sketh would come. One way or another, the waiting would end. On the 3rd day, it ended. Captain Pellix's voice cracked with fear. They are here, the Sketh. They are coming. Corvith turned to the tactical display. The screen was filled with red. Hundreds of signals moving together like a swarm of insects flowing through space toward their helpless ship. At the center of the swarm, 3 massive signatures pulsed with terrible energy. Hive carriers, the hearts of the Sketh Collective, each one home to thousands of drones and the central intelligence that commanded them. How long? Corvith asked. 20 minutes, Pellix said. Maybe less, they are moving fast. 20 minutes. After 3 days of waiting, they had 20 minutes left to live. Corvith looked at his crew. They were all there, gathered on the bridge because no one wanted to be alone at the end. Dreth sat in his chair, his usual cheerfulness gone, replaced by a tired acceptance. Toreth had come up from engineering, his tools still hanging from his belt, useless now. The others stood or sat wherever they could find space, holding hands, whispering final words to each other. Pellix was crying quietly at his station, but he did not look away from his screen. Even now, he was still doing his job, still watching, still hopping. I am sorry, Corvith said. His voice was heavy with grief. I am sorry I could not save you. I tried to keep you safe. I took the long way. I avoided every danger, but in the end it was not enough. It is not your fault, Captain, Dreth said. You did everything right. Sometimes the universe just decides it is your time. There is no escaping fate. Maybe the humans will still come, someone said. It was a young cargo worker, barely older than Pellix. Maybe they are on their way right now. No one answered. They had all stopped believing in rescue days ago. Corvith squared his shoulders. Everyone, listen to me. When the Sketh board, we fight. We may not win, but we make them pay for every life they take. We are Valorians. We are traitors, not warriors, but we are not cowards. we die on our feet. Heads nodded around the bridge. Hands tightened on whatever weapons they had found, cooking knives, metal pipes, tools from the engine room. It was pitiful, really. The Sketh would tear through them in seconds, but it was something. It was better than waiting passively for death. Captain, Pelix said suddenly. His voice had changed. There was something in it that had not been there before, something like wonder. Captain, I am picking up new signals. Corvith's head snapped toward the display. More Sketh. No, Pelix was staring at his screen with wide eyes. No, these are different. These are coming from the other direction, moving fast, faster than I have ever seen anything move. Captain, they just dropped out of hyperspace. The tactical display updated. New dots appeared on the screen, blue against the sea of red. 12 of them, moving in perfect formation, heading straight for the Sketh swarm. What are they? Dreth demanded. What kind of ships move that fast? Corvith felt his heart stop. He knew. Somehow, impossibly, he knew. Humans, he breathed. The humans came. The bridge erupted. Crew members shouted, laughed, cried, hugged each other. 3 days of despair shattered in an instant, replaced by wild, impossible hope. And then the communications console crackled to life. A voice came through. A human voice. Male, calm, steady. It spoke in accented galactic common, the universal trade language, and every word was clear. Valorian vessel Quiet Dawn, this is Captain Tiho of the Exterminator fleet, commanding the warship Iron Wake. We received your distress signal. Stay down and stay quiet. We will handle the rest. No one on the bridge moved. No one breathed. They were hearing a human speak for the first time in their lives. The voice of the monsters from their childhood stories. The voice of the predators they had spent their whole lives avoiding. And that voice had come to save them. Captain, Pelix whispered, what do we do? Corvith found his voice. You heard the man. Everyone get to the cargo hold. Seal the doors. Stay down and stay quiet. He paused. And pray that the stories about human combat skills are true. They ran. The whole crew, including Corvith, abandoned the bridge and fled deeper into the ship. They crowded into the cargo hold, the most protected part of the vessel, and sealed the heavy doors behind them. Then they waited, huddled together in the darkness, listening to the silence. The first impact came 3 minutes later. The ship shuddered as something struck the hull, then another impact, then another. The Sketh were here. They had reached the Quiet Dawn before the humans could intercept them. Drones were landing on the outer hull, cutting through the metal, forcing their way inside. Screams filled the cargo hold. Crew members pressed against each other, weapons raised, eyes fixed on the door. They could hear things moving in the corridors outside, skittering sounds, clicking sounds, the sounds of nightmares made real. And then they heard something else. Explosions, massive thundering explosions that shook the whole ship. The lights flickered wildly. The screams of the Sketh came through the walls, not screams of hunger but screams of pain, screams of fear. What is happening? Someone cried. Corvith pressed his ear to the cargo door. He could hear weapons fire now, not the organic pulse weapons of the Sketh but something else, something that roared like thunder and struck like lightning. Human weapons. Outside in the void, the real battle was beginning. The Iron Wake led the charge. Captain Tiho stood at the center of his bridge, calm as still water, watching the tactical display as his fleet tore into the Sketh swarm. Around him, his crew worked with silent efficiency. They had done this before. They had done this many times. Lieutenant Una, Tiho said, target the lead hive carrier, main guns. Una, a young woman with sharp eyes and steady hands, nodded once. Her fingers danced across her console, and the Iron Wake's primary weapons locked onto the massive Sketh vessel. Target acquired, she said, firing. The ship shuddered as beams of pure destruction lanced out across the void. They struck the hive carrier dead center, punching through its bioorganic armor like it was paper. The alien ship split in half, spilling drones and fluids into space. "Hive carrier down," Una reported, moving to secondary targets. Around them, the other human ships were doing the same. They moved through the swarm like wolves through sheep, their weapons blazing, their shields absorbing everything the Sketh could throw at them. The drones tried to adapt, tried to swarm the human vessels, but human targeting systems were too fast, too precise. Every drone that approached was destroyed before it could get close. In the engine room of the Iron Wake, a man named Minu watched his power readings with a grin on his face. He was the chief engineer, and he loved his job more than anything in the universe. Right now, his job was making sure the ship had enough power to kill everything in front of it. "Captain," he said into his comm, "I can give you 40% more power to the main guns if you need it." Tiho's voice came back amused. "How?" "I turned off the coffee makers." There was a pause. "All of them." "All 12. The crew will riot." "Then we better finish this fight fast." Minu laughed and threw another switch. The lights dimmed slightly as power surged toward the weapon systems. "Give them hell, Captain." Outside, the Iron Wake's guns roared again, and again, and again. The Sketh swarm, which had never been defeated in recorded history, began to fall apart. Inside the quiet dawn in the cargo hold, Corvith listened to the sounds of battle with tears streaming down his face. The humans had come. Against all logic, against everything he had believed, the humans had come to save them. And they were winning. The battle lasted 47 minutes. Corvith would remember that number for the rest of his life. 47 minutes to destroy a Sketh swarm that should have been unstoppable. 47 minutes to prove that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy was wrong. From inside the cargo hold, he could only listen. The sounds of combat were muffled by the thick metal walls, but they were constant. Explosions that shook the ship, the high-pitched whine of human weapons, the dying screams of Sketh drones, and underneath it all, a steady rhythm like a heartbeat, the pulse of the human fleet doing what it did best. Then suddenly silence. The crew held their breath. No one moved. No one spoke. They waited in the darkness, afraid to hope, afraid to believe it was over. A voice crackled over the ship's internal speakers, the same calm, steady voice they had heard before. "Valorian vessel, this is Captain Tiho. The Sketh swarm has been neutralized, all threats eliminated. We are sending a boarding party to assist with repairs and provide medical aid. Please do not be alarmed. We are here to help." The cargo hold erupted. Crew members fell to their knees, sobbing with relief. Others laughed hysterically, hugging anyone within reach. Dreth sat down heavily against a cargo container and buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook, but whether from laughter or tears, Corvith could not tell. Pelix grabbed Corvith's arm. "We survived, Captain, we survived." Corvith nodded slowly, still trying to process what had happened. "Yes, it seems we did." But surviving was one thing. What came next was another. The humans were boarding. The humans were coming aboard their ship. The same humans whose stories had haunted Valorian children for generations. Corvith straightened his uniform, took a deep breath, and prepared to meet the monsters. The cargo door hissed open. Corvith had expected warriors. He had expected towering figures in black armor, with eyes like death and weapons ready to fire. He had expected the predators from his nightmares. What he saw was a young woman with a medical kit. She was small by any standard, shorter than most Valorians, with dark hair pulled back from her face and tired eyes that still managed to hold warmth. She wore a gray uniform with a red cross on the shoulder, and she moved with quick, efficient purpose. "Hello," she said in accented Galactic common. "I am Medic Sora. Is anyone injured?" The Valorians stared at her. No one answered. They were too shocked, too confused. This was not what they had expected, not at all. Sora looked around the cargo hold, taking in the huddled crew, the makeshift weapons, the tear-streaked faces. Her expression softened. "It is all right," she said gently. "You are safe now. The Sketh are gone, all of them, but I need to check everyone for injuries. Is that okay?" Slowly, hesitantly, the crew began to respond. They showed her cuts and bruises from the attack. They pointed to crew members who had been hurt during the chaos. Sara moved among them with practiced ease, treating wounds, offering reassurance, never rushing, never showing impatience. More humans arrived, engineers to help repair the damage, soldiers to sweep the ship for any remaining Sketh drones. They were all sizes and shapes, men and women, young and old, but they all moved with the same purposeful efficiency. Corvith watched them work. He watched how they talked to each other, how they coordinated without seeming to need orders, how they treated his crew with gentle respect. And slowly, a terrible realization began to form in his mind. These were not monsters. He found himself walking through the corridors of his own ship, observing the humans as they repaired damaged systems and cleared debris. In the engine room, he encountered a human engineer working alongside Torath. The human, a young man who introduced himself as Jinnu, was explaining a repair technique that Torath had never seen before. "Your coupling was completely destroyed," Jinnu said, his hands moving deftly over the machinery. "But I can bypass it using a secondary power route. It will not be as efficient, but it will get you moving. Hold this." Torath held the component Jinnu handed him, staring at the human with open amazement. "You can fix our engine, just like that." "Just like that," Jinnu grinned. "Engines are engines, they all want to work, you just have to show them how." In another corridor, Corvith found Dreth talking to a human soldier. The soldier was cleaning his weapon, a terrifying device that looked like it could punch holes through starships, but he was speaking in a friendly, relaxed tone. "The Sketh are nasty customers," the soldier said. "But once you know their patterns, they are not so tough. They rely on numbers and coordination. Break their coordination and they fall apart. That is what we do, break things." Dreth nodded slowly. "You make it sound easy." The soldier shrugged. "It is not easy, but it is simple. Bad things hurt people. We stop bad things, that is the job." Corvith continued walking until he reached the bridge. There, standing at the main view screen, was Captain Tiho. He was not what Corvith had imagined. He was tall, yes, but lean rather than massive. His hair was gray at the temples, and his face bore the marks of many years and many battles. But his eyes were not the eyes of a predator. They were the eyes of someone who had seen too much suffering and had decided to do something about it. "Vessel Master Corvith," Tiho said, turning to face him. "Your ship should be operational within a few hours. My engineers are good at their work." Corvith bowed slightly, a Valorian gesture of respect. "Captain Tiho, I do not know how to thank you. You saved my crew. You saved all of us." "No thanks necessary." Tiho's voice was matter of fact. "You sent a distress signal, we responded. That is how it works." "But we are not your people." Corvith could not keep the confusion from his voice. "We are Valorians. We have avoided your space for generations. We have never asked for your help. We have never offered you anything. Why would you come for us?" Tiho was silent for a moment. He turned back to the view screen, looking out at the debris field where the Sketh swarm had been. Human ships moved through the wreckage, making sure nothing survived. "Let me show you something," he said. He pressed a control and the view screen changed. It now showed an external view of the quiet dawn. The little merchant vessel was scarred and battered, holes torn in its hull, but it was intact. It was alive. "Your ship," Tiho said. "A simple merchant vessel, no weapons, no armor, no military value whatsoever. You were carrying minerals, yes. Industrial goods, nothing that would change the course of any war." "Yes," Corvith admitted, "we are just traders." "Just traders," Tiho nodded. "And how many traders are there in this galaxy? How many little ships carrying simple goods with simple crews just trying to make a living? Thousands, millions, and every single one of them deserves to make it home safely. He turned to face Corvith again. I do not care if you are Valorian or human or anything else. I do not care if you like us or fear us or hate us. When someone calls for help, we come. When something threatens innocent people, we stop it. Not because we want something in return. Not because of treaties or alliances or profit. Because it is the right thing to do. Corvith felt something shift inside him. Something that had been fixed in place for his entire life. The stories we tell about humans, he said slowly. The stories of predators and monsters. They are wrong, are they not? Tiho smiled, and for the first time, Corvith saw kindness in the expression. Not entirely wrong, Tiho said. We are predators in a way. We do hunt our enemies across the galaxy. We do not stop until the threat is eliminated, but we are very careful about who we consider enemies. We only hunt monsters, and we only protect people. He put a hand on Corvith's shoulder. It was warm, human warm. You called for help, Vessel Master. That makes you people. Corvith had no words. For the first time in his long life, he had no words at all. Outside, the human fleet finished its sweep. The last traces of the Sketh swarm vanished into the void, and the quiet dawn, small and battered but alive, began to move again. The journey home took 3 weeks, but this time the quiet dawn did not travel alone. 2 human escort ships flanked the little merchant vessel, their weapons ready, their sensors constantly scanning for threats. Captain Tiho had insisted. The Sketh may have other swarms in the region, he had said. We will make sure you reach Valorian space safely. Corvith had wanted to argue, to say that they had already asked for too much, that he could not accept any more help. But he had looked at his crew, at their tired, grateful faces, and he had simply nodded. Thank you, he had said. It seemed to be the only words he knew anymore. During those 3 weeks, Corvith spent much of his time on the bridge of the Iron Wake. Captain Tiho had invited him to visit whenever he wished, and Corvith found himself drawn to the human ship again and again. He was trying to understand something, trying to see past the stories of his childhood to the truth beneath. The human crew treated him with casual friendliness. They offered him food from their supplies, strange dishes with strong flavors that burned his tongue but somehow made him want more. They showed him their entertainment programs, stories about human heroes and human struggles that were surprisingly similar to Valorian tales. They asked him questions about his own people, genuinely curious, never mocking. Lieutenant Yuna, the tactical officer who had destroyed the first hive carrier, turned out to have a collection of small plants that she kept in her quarters. She showed them to Corvith one evening, explaining each one with obvious pride. This one is from Earth, she said, pointing to a small green thing with delicate leaves. My grandmother grew these. She gave me a cutting before I left home. It reminds me of her. You miss your home? Corvith asked. Every day, Yuna smiled. But there are things that need doing out here, people who need help. I can miss home and still be where I am needed. Engineer Minu taught Toreth 3 new repair techniques and gave him a set of human tools as a gift. Keep them, he said when Toreth tried to return them. Every engineer should have good tools. Besides, I have plenty more. Medic Sara checked on the Valorian crew every day, making sure their wounds were healing, asking about their health, remembering their names. She learned to pronounce Valorian words correctly and laughed at her own mistakes. And Hana, the communications officer who had first received their distress signal, spent hours talking to Pelix about navigation techniques. They compared star maps and trading routes, and Corvith watched the young navigator's fear slowly transform into fascination. One evening, near the end of the journey, Corvith found Captain Tiho alone on the observation deck. The human stood by the great windows, looking out at the stars with an expression that might have been peace. May I join you? Corvith asked. Of course. They stood in silence for a while, watching the universe drift past. Finally, Corvith spoke. I have been trying to understand, he said. My people have told stories about humans for generations. We believed you were monsters, predators who hunted and killed without mercy. We avoided you because we were afraid. And now I find that everything we believed was wrong. Tiho did not respond immediately. He seemed to be choosing his words with care. Not everything, he said at last. We are dangerous. We can be violent. When we choose to destroy something, we are very thorough about it, but we try to aim that violence carefully. We try to point it at things that deserve to be destroyed. The Sketh, the raiders and pirates who prey on the helpless, the empires that conquer and enslave. Those are our enemies. Those are what we hunt. And everyone else. Everyone else. Tiho turned to look at Corvith. Everyone else is just people, trying to live their lives, trying to be happy, trying to make it home to their families. Why would we hurt people like that? What would be the point? Corvith thought about his own family, waiting for him back on his homeworld. His wife, his children, his grandchildren, some of whom were almost as old as Pelix now. He had left them months ago, expecting to return with profits and goods. Instead, he was returning with something much more valuable. A new understanding. When we reach Velorian space, Corvith said slowly, I will speak to the Council of Elders. I will tell them what happened here. I will tell them that the humans came to save us when no one else would, that you asked for nothing in return, that you treated us with kindness and respect. You do not have to do that, Tiho said. Yes, I do. Corvith's voice was firm. My people have been wrong about humans for too long. We have hidden from you, feared you, taught our children to run from the very mention of your name. But you saved my crew, you saved my ship, and you did it simply because we asked. He bowed deeply, lower than he had ever bowed to anyone before. There is no debt great enough to repay what you have done, but I can start by telling the truth. The humans are not monsters. The humans are protectors, and perhaps, if you are willing, the humans can be friends. Tiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, and he extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Friends sounds good to me. Corvith took his hand. The grip was warm and strong. The quiet dawn reached Velorian space 2 days later. The human escort ship stopped at the border, unwilling to enter without permission, but their presence had not gone unnoticed. Velorian patrol vessels came to meet the little merchant ship, their crews staring in amazement at the human warships that flanked it. Corvith sent a message ahead, requesting an immediate audience with the Council of Elders. By the time they reached the homeworld, half the population seemed to know what had happened. He stood before the council the next day, in the great chamber where generations of Velorian leaders had made their decisions. The elders sat in their high seats, ancient and wise, looking down at him with expressions that ranged from skepticism to fear. He told them everything. He told them about the sabotage, the Sketh attack, the desperate distress signal. He told them about Captain Tiho and his fleet, about the battle that lasted 47 minutes, about the kindness of the human crew. He told them that the stories were wrong, that humans were not monsters to be feared, but people to be understood. When he finished, the chamber was silent. Finally, the eldest of the elders, a Velorian so old that his skin had faded to almost white, spoke. You ask us to believe that humans saved a Velorian ship without expecting anything in return. You ask us to overturn generations of caution and fear. You ask us to reach out to a species we have avoided since we first discovered they existed. Yes, Corvith said simply, I do. The elder studied him for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. We will consider your words, we will debate, we will study, and in time we will decide. He paused. But you are not wrong, Vessel Master. Perhaps it is time for new stories. 3 months later, a Velorian diplomatic vessel entered human space for the first time in history. It carried a single message, composed by the Council of Elders after weeks of debate. The message was simple. It said, "We wish to talk." Captain Tiho received it aboard the Iron Wake. He read it twice, then showed it to his crew. Yuna smiled. Minyu laughed. Hana wiped tears from her eyes. Even Sora, who rarely showed emotion, looked pleased. Across the galaxy, other species heard what had happened in the Hollow Reach. Some grew more afraid of humans than ever. If the humans could destroy a Sketh swarm so easily, what chance did anyone have against them? But others, species who had also lived in fear, species who had also hidden and avoided, began to wonder. If the Valorians could reach out to humans and be welcomed, could they? On 100 worlds, on 1,000 ships, beings looked toward human space and considered the unthinkable. And in the quiet darkness between stars, the universe slowly began to change. Corvith watched the news reports from his home, surrounded by his family. His grandchildren sat at his feet, listening to him tell the story of the battle in the Hollow Reach, of the human captain who had saved them all. "Were you scared, grandfather?" the youngest one asked. "Terrified," Corvith admitted. "But I learned something important. Sometimes the things we fear the most are not enemies at all. Sometimes they are friends we have not met yet. And sometimes, when everything seems hopeless, help comes from the most unexpected places." He looked out the window at the stars. The humans call themselves exterminators. They destroy the things that threaten the innocent. But I think they are something else. I think they are what this galaxy has needed for a very long time. He smiled at his grandchildren. "I think they are hope." Far away, aboard the Iron Wake, Captain Tiho received word that the first Valorian diplomatic mission was en route. He stood at his window, looking at the stars, and thought about the strange little merchant ship that had called for help in the darkness. They had spent centuries avoiding the monsters. They had never considered that the monsters might be the only ones willing to save them. And now, perhaps, the monsters and the merchants could become something else entirely. Perhaps they could become family. Tiho smiled and went to prepare for his guests. The story was just beginning.